Morning, everybody. It is March the 3rd. The slaughterhouse of failure is not in our destiny. We shall persevere until we succeed. Burn that into your mantra. This is Ogmandino, a little bit modified. So today we want to talk about a question that actually Dan brought up, referring to his stepson. And from there, we're going to take it a little bit further on and in various other places. So the question today, and we'll ask you, and then Dan can kick it off because he's got to catch a plane, is, are you really in? What does it mean to be really in? When people say, I'm in, what does it really mean? How in are you? So Dan, you can go on with this for your stepson.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up this video. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Nope.
No?
And,
Let me see here.
I might be able to find it.
Here, hold on a second.
So
it's not.
in the meanwhile, let me see if I can. No, I can't help you with that subject.
Can you guys see my screen right now?
Nope.
No.
Okay. All right. Oh, this is not working.
Okay, I think I might be able to do it. Yeah, I can do this. Share screen. Okay.
There we go.
Screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry about the glitch. It's all remote everywhere. So Dan, go ahead.
Can you hit play?
You said, I'm all in. Were you really all in? Let me tell you what the cost of being all in is. Early mornings, late nights, being misunderstood, having very few friends, being your own cheerleader. Are you those things? People always talk about, man, I'm a hard worker. Everybody in this room is a hard worker. That's not going to separate you from anybody else. What are you working hard on?
So that's a little 28-second video of my stepson Henry. He's 12, and at the back in late fall, they were starting up wrestling in the town where I live at Hershey Middle School, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to wrestle. His younger brother wanted to. Porter, he's 9. He's always been very physical. Henry has not been quite as physical as Porter. He doesn't ever want to hurt anybody's feelings. That even includes, in sports, he doesn't want to win because he's afraid that it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. And so throughout the weeks coming up to wrestling practice, I kept talking to him about it. And the day before wrestling, he said, I want to wrestle. I want to try wrestling. And so he got out there. We take him to wrestling. They have practice 3 days a week. They have practice Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 2 hours at the high school with some of the high school kids. And at the first couple of weeks obviously weren't great because it was a new sport and he hadn't done it before. It was something completely new. But as the season progressed, he started to figure it out. He's always been more of a, I don't want to say loner, but he's not as social as Porter and most other kids. And so I thought wrestling was going to be a good sport for him for that reason, because it's kind of an individual sport, even though it's a team sport. But as the season started to progress, he started to get more and more involved in it, more and more involved in the technique. And we started to talk about why that was. And it was because he was starting to see success. And we had, I had a conversation with him about halfway through the season. And I said, hey, buddy, it's okay if you don't want to wrestle anymore. And I was joking with him because I knew he was really into it. And he said, are you crazy? He said, I'm all in. I'm doing everything I can to be successful at this. And if you've never been to a wrestling match, it's kind of interesting. So when they have one mat in the gymnasium, when the mats start, they bring down the lights in the gym, but they focus a light over top of the mat where they're wrestling. And so it's basically just you and one other person. And so we talked about this, and I started to talk to him about, what do you like about wrestling? And he said, what I like about wrestling is the fact that I'm responsible for my own training. I'm responsible when I get out there. It's just me and somebody else. And so when I'm out there, I need to be able to perform better than the other person. And so as the season started to progress, he got better and better and better. And about a month before the end of the season, he comes to me and he says, "Hey, Dad, do you think we could join the local community center?" And I was like, "Hey, buddy, why do you want to do that?" And he's like, "Well, I want to go start working out a couple days a week." And so he has to walk about not long, maybe a half a mile from his school. So what he started doing was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, he started walking over to the gym, and he'd work out for an hour and a half by himself to get better, to get stronger, to get more physical. And so, obviously we're really, really proud of him, but he always comes to me and talks to me about how he wants to be the best he can, because it's only him. He's the only one that's responsible for his actions, for his training, for getting better. And so, that's what it takes to be all in. You have to do those things that are going to set you up to be successful. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend 40 hours or 60 hours a week doing it, but you have to spend your time wisely. Spend your time on those things that are going to make you better. Spend your time on those things that are going to make you more successful. So, just kind of sum it up, this was way, way outside his comfort zone. He's not a physical kid. But as the season wore on, he started to realize that it was a sport that he really enjoyed, and that it was something that he could really excel at if he put his mind towards the right things. And that's going to every practice. He never asked to skip a practice. He was excited about going to practice every week. He was excited about going to the tournaments. In the first couple of tournaments, he didn't do great. He'd lost a majority of his matches. He might have wrestled 5 or 6 matches at each tournament and won maybe 2. But by the end of the season, his last tournament, he had 5 matches and he pinned all of his opponents in under 30 seconds. And that's what it takes to reach the level of success that you want to reach. It's constantly practicing. It's constantly reevaluating your goals. It's doing those things that you can do to maximize your time more efficiently to reach those goals.
So, Dan, what was his why?
It's funny. His why has always been to protect his brother and his mother. So his why is to get stronger, get better at these techniques, so that if he needs to protect his brother and his mother, he's able to do that. So, I'm sure his why is going to change as he continues on his path, but I think it's probably shifting more into just, being the best that he can be in this individual sport. And when I was thinking about this for this call, I was thinking, the Pharmanex business is very similar. This is an individual business, but we also rely on our team to be successful. And wrestling is very similar to that. Wrestling is an individual sport, but the team points combine. So there's an individual competition, but then there's a team competition. So there's a match within a match. That is what they say in wrestling. So, you still do rely on your teammates to win that overall match against whoever the team is that you're opposing.
Well, so bearing all these things in mind, and I think the example is very, very nice. It's a good example. So after we chatted a little bit yesterday with Dan and I, and he was telling me about Porter, I started to think about this business about being all in. And so, for example, in 1519, Hernan Cortés arrived in the New World with 600 men, and upon arrival made history by burning his ships. This sent a clear message to his men: there is no turning back. 2 years he succeeded in his complete conquest of the Aztec Empire. So being all in means exactly that. Give another example. Nelson, he was blind in one eye, and he was a commander of his flotilla of ships and so on. And his officers came to him and said to them, we're surrounded. The Danes are going to be coming in big army of a big flotilla of Danes. And he put the telescope to his blind eye, and he said, I don't see any ships. I don't see any. We're not going back. We're continuing. Because he was absolutely committed to winning. He was a leader. That was his job, his calling. Think about somebody who's all in and who goes sailing around the world in a yacht by him or herself. That's all in, man. You're sailing around the world, or you're sailing on a boat with just you and the elements. Think of the loneliness, the morale, the fear, uncertainty, danger. Talking to yourself about being, encouraging yourself. These are all things that we really need to think about if we're all in. It's an unswerving belief in ourselves. We've got to be deaf to the naysayers. Why does a person sail around the world alone on a boat? Is it the thrill? Is it the fame? Is it the adventure? Everybody has a why to do something. Why did Henry decide that he wanted to be good at his wrestling? We know why Nelson decided he wasn't going to see the enemy, because he didn't want to believe that he was going to have anything other than success. So there's another one, Ferdinand Magellan in 1480, Portuguese explorer. He was the first one to sail around the world. Again, this was in 1480. Think about 1480. Today we've got maps, we've got charts, we've got GPS, we've got everything. But in 1480, we had nothing. And he took his people and he sailed around the world. So, and he, to cross to the West Indies. So the why, we've got to understand what our why is. To be able to really know how all in are we. When Dan was telling me about his stepson, it reminded me of a kid the son of a friend of ours, who was really not very good looking. He had quite a few flaws. And he was bullied, and he was, people would make fun of him and so on. So he decided to play squash. And he played squash, and he decided to be the best he could. And he was actually selected for the Olympics. When he was a squash player who was excelling in what he was doing, then he had all the girls come and look for him. They overlooked his defects because he was successful. And all those bully guys, they became his friends. So the why is one of the reasons that we are either half-hearted or all in. So the question then is, where are we? Each one of us. Is our why clear enough to be absolutely all in, or are we just partly in? Because if we're all in, that's what it means. Dan reminded me of a story that this morning that I was talking about, this Austrian architect, successful guy in Austria. And I met him, he was living in a cave in Positano, Italy, with an ex-Australian prostitute, because he wanted to paint. His hobby was painting. His passion was painting. He didn't want to be an architect anymore. But it takes a lot of courage to just burn your bridges and go and live in a cave in South Italy, because that's what he loved, and be a painter and live off that. So we have to analyze, and these are the questions we always ask ourselves. Who are we? How well do we know ourselves? What do we want? These are really, really deep questions. Who are you? How well do you know yourself? What do you want? Huge questions. And they're answers which only we have the answers. I don't know if go ahead, Dan.
There's a great video that I showed on our team call a few months ago, and it's a Matthew McConaughey video. And the first line is, don't half-ass it.
Yeah.
Do you want to be remembered as somebody that half-assed everything, or do you want to be remembered as somebody who went all in? Because when you go all in, good things happen. Good things come from that, right? You reach your goals, your success, the level of success that you want. And in Henry's case, he came back yesterday. They had an end of season meeting with the sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. And he came back and he said, I said, "Hey, bud, how'd your meeting go?" They just went over what we talked, how we did this season and improvements. And I was like, "Anything good happen?" He's like, "Yeah, they came to me and told me that I'm going to be the leader of the team because of my work ethic. I'm a good example for everybody else." And he was, and I said, "How does that make you feel?" And he's like, "That makes me feel great." And so, that's one of the I don't want to say consequence, but that's one of the positive things that happens from going all in. People recognize that. People recognize that that's the type of person you are, that for instance, that you'll be there for them when you need them, that you can always count on them, that you're the kind of person that does whatever it takes to be successful or to help people. Another example from Lawrence's examples there are Alex Honnold. If you've ever seen the documentary about him climbing El Capitan without ropes, it's called Free Solo. Think about these guys that climb these huge mountains. I think El Cap's like almost 3,000 meters of climbing, or 3,000 feet of climbing. Think about climbing without a ropes. Once you get 30, 40, 50 feet off the ground, you're all in, because it's actually harder to climb than it is to keep going climbing up. So, that's the ultimate being all in. And like I said, all in doesn't need to mean you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I watched another documentary last night, and I hate to keep bringing up wrestling, but Penn State wrestling, they have won 8 of the last 11 national championships, and they did a documentary on their coach. And there's so many different things that they do, but everybody's envious of them because they seem to be having fun all the time, but they're also all in. And when anybody talks about practicing, about wrestling others, they always say, "Oh, we're just out here having fun." But what everybody does know is that some of these wrestling teams, these high level wrestling teams in college, they spend 3-4 hours practicing a day. And what they've come to find out is Penn State, they spend like an hour or an hour and a half wrestling a day. And so why can they be so much better than everybody else when they're practicing less, time? Because they're all in when they're in the mat room. They're doing the right things while they're practicing. They're not just practicing for the sake of practicing because your coach says you need to practice 4 hours every day. They go in there and they wrestle hard. They play dodgeball. They play dodgeball for like a half an hour of their hour and a half long practice. So he's making it fun, but he's also making sure that everybody's all in when they're in the mat room, which translates to being when they're on the mat, wrestling an opponent.
Well, if you think about that, what you just said, we talk about attitude, discipline, dedication, focus. These are things that are all pertinent to being all in and not half-assed. With Donahue, that we talked about, a couple of weeks ago, not being half-assed, not doing things half-assed. So it's all mindset. It's all mindset, attitude, discipline, dedication, focus, the will to win, the desire. And even if you do it on a team basis, as we're talking about, this applies to business as well. It applies to our business, to any business. If you're a leader, you have the attitude of making things happen, sorting it out, of winning. These are attitudes that we adopt for ourselves, and we try and bring out in the people that are with us. That's what the teams are all about, to find the people and bring out the best in each individual in their wrestling. That's what the job of a coach is, to bring out the traits that the person maybe doesn't even know about. You brought that out with Henry by asking him to go and inviting him to go and wrestle. Maybe he didn't want it at the beginning, as you said, but you brought out the best in him. And this is what it's about. It's about bringing out the best in the people that are around us.
And never doubt somebody, because when I started talking to Henry and Porter about wrestling, I thought Henry was going to be a dud. I didn't think he was going to do anything. I didn't think he was going to excel at it at all. Porter's always been the physical one. I'm like, Porter's gonna, go out there and he's gonna be a monster. Well, guess what? Porter's not coachable. He thinks he knows everything. He goes out there and the coaches try to tell him stuff. He's like, I know. Henry's coachable. Anything that the coach shows Henry, he just soaks up like a sponge. So don't ever underestimate anybody, because you never know once they get into that mode, that all-in mode, what they're going to become.
Dan, if I could say something, Dan, in relation to wrestling. So Henry, how is he getting better? Is it from like reading about wrestling, or is it stretching or lifting weights, or is it actually wrestling?
It's actually wrestling. It's
okay.
It's actually taking the action. It's not
right.
It's not all the extraneous things that can be distractions. He's in the mat room every day when he's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
So he's doing exactly what he needs to do to be successful, to get better, to learn the moves, to be able to dominate others on the mat.
That's the point I wanted to make. I had a contracting company years ago, and the office manager, I was talking with her one day, and I mentioned, it probably wasn't a bad thing to say, but I said that your labor, while it's necessary, it's actually unproductive. And she couldn't believe I said that. And I explained that the productive laborers are out in the field. They're working. They're the ones that are actually generating. But we need you. But this isn't considered productive for, as far as generating revenue. And she couldn't quite get that. But in our business, the way that relates is, and I've seen this so many times, people say, I'm getting started. And all they do is study and look at everything. And listen, guys, we're paid to go out and do it, to talk to people. We're paid to talk to people. And then when it's not working, what do? They find someone else that's doing the same thing. Misery loves company, right? And then they got two people sharing that, it's not working for them. But when you analyze, neither one of them actually has gone out into the field and spoke to anyone. So we talk about hard work, and we're taught this when we're young, study hard, work hard. But actually, why don't we shift that mindset to study with passion and work with love? And when we do that, it completely changes the mindset, right? And that's what once you start working in this business with what we're doing, it's an act of love, in my opinion. I absolutely love what I do. I don't even consider it work, and it's something I'm never going to stop doing. I'll slow down eventually, but I love what I do. And that when I wake up in the morning with that mindset, it changes everything. So really good call today, guys. You really got my head going.
It's not about taking action. It's about taking the right kind of action. And the other thing that successful people are willing to make sacrifices to reach their goals. But more importantly, successful people are willing to do things that they don't want to do to be successful, right? You keep doing the things that you need to be successful, despite whether you want to do them or not. I was talking to a colleague of mine out in California yesterday, and I told him I was going on vacation. I was like, but by Wednesday, I'll be bored and I'll be back on my phone working, and he's like, you don't know how to vacation. And basically I told him, I'm like, look, I've set my life up that every day is a vacation. I can't differentiate between work days and non-work days, because I'm not standing around in operating rooms with no windows from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. This is a vacation for me from what I was used to for 25 years. I'm on my way to the airport and I just pull over and I jump on a Zoom call with all of you. And then when the Zoom call's over, I continue on my way and, hop on a flight and go to Detroit today. But, it's all about what you want in life and what you want to achieve. And, for me at this point, and I think a lot of others on this call, it's about time freedom. Are you willing to do what it takes to have that time freedom?
It's the same question always. Your why? Why would you do this? What is it? We've got to define that. And just as a parting shot here, I wanted to say that, when you mentioned about doing things that we don't like to do sometimes, there's a whole book about that. Eat the frog. We don't want to do something, just do it. And it's the first thing you do in the morning. And the rest of it becomes easier. Anyway, Dan, wish you a good trip. And does anybody have anything they want to add? Anything they want to comment?
With what you just said, Lawrence, eat the frog. I mean, why are you eating the frog? It may be something difficult at the time, but think of the reason you're eating it. And that's the passion. That's the passion that moves you forward. Yeah, there's some difficult things that we do. But if you think about why you're doing them, what your goal is personally, financially, with your family, that's the reason you do it. And all of a sudden, you know what? It's not so bad anymore.
Exactly. Gets easier. All right. Well, that's it. It's 10:02. Thanks everybody for being on the call. Sorry about the glitch this morning and getting started. We had to go via all sorts of things to get passwords and stuff. So apologize for that. The late start. Thanks everybody for being on the call.
Thanks, everybody.
Dan, be safe. God
All
bless.
right. Have a good weekend.
Have a safe trip, Dan. Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
call, guys.
Thanks
Safe
everybody.
travels, brother.
Thank you.